A game that denies concepts of reality, space, and time, forces you to choose something or die. Will you play it? Let's find out in this complete movie explanation of Netflix's latest horror thriller film, Choose or Die. The movie starts with a loud quarrel between a mother and her son. They are fighting about something. Over in the other room, the husband is listening to them. He is clearly exhausted. Hal goes back and switches on his computer. He was trying to run an old game from the 80s called Cursor. The reality is cursed. Some questions started appearing on the monitor. These were related to the stuff around him. In disbelief, he continued to answer them, when suddenly the next question shocked him. His tongue or her ears. This was regarding the argument his wife and son were having outside. Hal got scared and refused to answer. He was punished with an extremely high-frequency noise that hurt his ears. He quickly selected an option to stop the pain. He went outside the room and saw his wife trembling with fear. She had a bloody ear in her hand. This was the son's ear that she had cut off with a knife. She was crying and repeatedly said that she doesn't know what she is doing. He saw the monitor again. He had selected the first option, and that is exactly what had happened. The story moves 3 months ahead. We see a girl named Kayla, who worked as a janitor in a company called Kismet. She had a horrible boss who did not give a single damn about her workers. Kayla went over to meet her friend Isaac, who was developing a game. She was also a programmer but wasn't able to land a job yet. He was very fond of collecting retro objects and was obsessed with the 80s. As Kayla was going through his stuff, she found a game called Cursor, which had a $125,000 prize if they won. Kayla was already struggling to meet ends, and really needed the money, so she convinced Isaac to play with her and distribute the prize money in half if they win. When they called on the number, they were greeted by a voicemail by Robert, in a very grim voice. He said that they were either losers or had won. Kayla told Isaac to meet her in a cafe late at night and left for home. Her mother Tia was depressed and she was watching her son's old videos. Kayla's little brother had passed away in a drowning accident a few months ago. Her mother was still grieving, and to cope with her loss, she had started using substances. Kayla used to take care of her mother and look after the house, all by herself. Later that night, after work, Kayla went to the cafe she had earlier told Isaac about. She was on her laptop, waiting for him to come, but there was no sign of him. She texted him multiple times but there was still no response. Tired and annoyed, Kayla decided to start the game by herself. She was on level 1. The question asked whether she would take coffee or cake. When she looked over at the menu, the whole menu was filled with only these 2 options. She chose coffee, and out of nowhere a waitress came and poured her a cup. Whatever the waitress was saying was being typed into the monitor by itself. This was very shocking. Kayla got spooked and shut the laptop. Suddenly, there was fog all around her and she saw her dead brother. He was saying choose or die. Kayla turned on the laptop and was back in the real world again. The game asked if she would like a break and she typed yes. Soon, the waitress started breaking glasses on the floor. Quickly, Kayla typed in the word stop. The waitress sat down, picked up the broken glass, and started chewing it. It was clear that she did not want to do this, but her body was not cooperating with her mind. It all looked extremely painful. Kayla rushed to stop her, but she was scared by the cafe owner, who screamed at her and glitched. The waitress was crying and told her that she cannot stop. And like this, level 1 of this horrible game was now complete. The next morning, Kayla was woken up by a conversation between her mother and a police officer. He was asking Tia about Kayla. He needed to speak to her regarding what had happened in the cafe last night. The waitress had committed suicide, and as Kayla was there, she was required to answer some questions. This tells us that what happened was in fact real and the game was not lying. Kayla had a draining conversation with her mother, who was refusing to take any meds. She wanted Lance to help them both. Lance was a guy who supplied her mother with substances. Kayla got out and saw him standing in the hallway. He was a terrible person who offered to help her in return for sexual favors. She dismissed him and visited Isaac. She told him everything that had happened the night before, but he did not believe her. Later that night, she got a call from her mother, who sounded terrified and scared. She said that there were rats in the house who were about to attack her. Kayla got confused and ended the call. Suddenly, a creepy green light surrounded the building, and a computer on which the game cursor was playing was sitting in the hall. Kayla walked over. There was a map of her house, with her mother inside. She also saw the rat her mom was talking about. This was the next level. She could hear her mom screaming for help, and the rat getting impatient. The screen showed the same question: choose or die. Kayla was guiding her mother through the rooms, but the rat was fast. If she did not soon figure out a way, her mother could die. The last option was to make her mother jump out the window, and that is what she did. After this, level 2 of the game was completed. Kayla was now freaking out. She started destroying the computer. Her boss saw this and fired her on the spot. She visited her mom in the hospital room and spent some time with her. Later, at home, she saw the whole house destroyed. As she walked around, she recorded everything on her phone and transferred the game on it as well. She went over to Isaac's place, who believed her after seeing the video she had recorded. Isaac and Kayla started going through the game's code to figure out how the game was working like this, but they couldn't find anything. It was just normal coding. Then they decided to decipher the sound of the game, in hopes of finding something. Both of them waited till 2 a.m., when they would be able to play the game again. As soon as the game started, Isaac recorded its sound. There were different symbols with gaps in them. Both couldn't understand what these meant. It was time to play the game now. Kayla suggested that they don't play the game, because Isaac could get hurt. Here she was painfully punished with a high-frequency noise, which Isaac stopped by continuing the game. There were 2 doors, one blue and the other red. When he approached the blue door, he heard someone say die. Isaac got back and they decided to enter the red door. The vision was blurry. Kayla saw her dead brother Ricky, and ran after him. She got to the pool where Ricky had drowned. Isaac followed her. He told her to stop, as this was not real. In the pool, Ricky attacked Isaac. Both of them were lying on the ground, and Kayla was given the option to choose and save either one of them. She chose Isaac, and pulled him out of the pool. As she was pulling, Ricky attacked her. Kayla had to choke and kill him, to get rid of him to continue saving Isaac. Later that night, she told him about her little brother. Ricky loved playing in the water, and she would often take him to the pool. One day, she looked away just for a few seconds, and unfortunately, he drowned. Isaac consoled her, and said that it wasn't her fault. Although, she knew she wasn't to blame, but in her heart, she still felt guilty. This hurt and pain she had, was what the game took advantage of. Next morning, Isaac had used the number on the cover of the game to find an address. Both of them drove to the location. It was an abandoned warehouse. There was no one around, and even the phone calls were answered by an automated message. They followed the cables and got to a room with a lot of equipment. There were also symbols similar to the coding of the game. It was clear that the game was created over here. They found the first tape recording of the game, Beta 1 test tape, and played it. A guy named Beck explained that when he found out about the curse, he did not know what it meant or its origin, but he knew that there were paranormal entities at play. Curse meant to give pain and suffering to a lot of people. Beck had used these symbols to make an 8-bit horror game called Cursor in 1984. The cursor would gain benefit by making others suffer. The more pain someone felt, the more the cursor would feel joy. He showed an experiment to prove this. He gave a man choice to either eat his hand or the computer. When the man ate his hand, this healed the cut on his arm. Isaac and Kayla were totally freaked out after this. As they had hacked into the game, they were punished. Isaac started to glitch. Beck was repeatedly asking Kayla to rewind or fast forward. She chose fast forward. A lot of tape started coming out of Isaac's mouth. He was clearly in extreme pain, but they had to finish this level. As soon as the complete roll of the tape finished, she ran towards him. His body was internally damaged and he died. Kayla was heartbroken. It was now time for the boss level. She found some coordinates and drove to the location. This was Hal's house, the guy we saw in the beginning. He was shocked to see her there. It is revealed that in order for Hal to survive, the game demanded that he made copies and distributed them. This was also how Isaac and Kayla had gotten the game. She told him that this was the boss level. Hal, who was a small petty man, started complaining about how she is not a hero, and in fact, he is. As he was talking, his wife tried to kill him. He stopped and hurt her arm. In an argument between Kayla and Hal, he struck her, but shockingly, this only hurt himself. This was because both of these were the cursors and the cursed for each other now. If they hurt themselves, the other would suffer the pain. Both of them start fighting and came out of the house. Hal tried to kill her by pointing the gun at himself, but it was out of bullets. Kayla picked up a big stone and jumped into the water, hoping to drown. This killed Hal, who was standing outside the pool. Laura, the wife, helped her out of the water. She was happy Hal had gone, as he was an evil man. At the end, Kayla had won the game. She completed the code of the game and redesigned it to her liking. She made Lance her first target. It was sweet revenge. Bet called her and thanked her for completing the game. He asked her who would suffer next. Only those who deserve it, she replied.